It's roundtable. Shorter panel. Actually, this was supposed to be the largest panel that we've ever had. We were supposed to go 6 because I was going to extend it out to 6 because people are like, I want to be on, or I want to be on another episode, and I was like, we only do it monthly, but stretching it to 6 would get 3 more regulars on. And then Brian said, hey, I gotta go, and then Michael's asleep. But don't worry, we're still going to talk about his Australian movie. Scott's here, one of the returners for every episode, except one. I think you've only missed one to this point. How are you doing? What movie did you bring to us today?
I'm doing good. I guess it's only been a month since the last one. It feels like it's been a while, maybe just because of the holidays and all that. I guess we did maybe record that one a little bit.
We recorded early in December, so then this one was like 6 weeks long.
I'm good. The movie I brought was The Ice Storm, Ang Lee's family drama from the late 90s.
Some would not the Ang Lee that we thought you'd bring after being on top 100. We thought you'd bring the Hulk, but may stick around. It may come on another time.
To be fair.
That's fair. Holtzman, you're on. I wanted to get you on one of these episodes. I actually stole one of your movies, I think. You were going to bring one if you were ever.
You did like the first episode, and I was like, if I'm ever on this, I'm gonna pick Night of the Hunter. And then the second episode, I think you went Night of the Hunter. I was like, okay, cool, great. I went to like 5 backups, and then finally picked my movie. Which the movie I picked was Colossal. Just a cool indie sci-fi monster movie, but also like a really human story. I think it's really cool. Yeah.
Dylan, probably the person in this community that I like see eye to eye with on every film that's ever been made.
Absolutely.
Dylan, what'd you bring and how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Excited to talk about the fucking alcoholism and animal cruelty in these movies tonight. But the movie I brought is a film from 2018 called Tigers Are Not Afraid, which is a dark fantasy set in like the Mexican drug cartel wars, and it's a underseen film that I feel like more people should see. So,
yeah, and I'm doing okay. I brought The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, a Western that I think does not actually rank to the level that some Westerns do. I think it's good once everybody sees it, but I think it's underseen, so that's why I picked it. It's kind of crazy. Because everybody's like, so what's the theme and what do we pick and what do I like? You pick whatever you want on the show and whatever happens. I kind of pick people also that I don't get to hear talk a lot about like their film taste and stuff. Like I know their taste. Like Dylan is one that I've talked to about movies, but I want to hear him discuss it on film on call. So, and then we can't forget there is another person that's not here. One that I'm very upset. Brian picked Strange Brew, which I was really excited to watch, but then we scrapped it. I've never seen it. Scott was not excited, but I've heard nothing.
It's one of my all-time favorites. I was so happy when I saw it.
And then I guess it's a Rite of Passion right next to like Crocodile Dundee and Mad Max. Wake and Fright is the one that the Kangaroo Slaughter movie is what I'm going to call it. We'll talk about it later, but that's basically what it is. I guess Roundtable kind of works, but we're just open discussion on these movies. And then, so the first one we're going to talk about tonight is Colossal. We're going to talk about Colossal. So before we're getting into details of the movie, you kind of explained it a little bit, but what made you gravitate towards this movie, and then why did you pick it for this specific episode?
Yeah, when I was looking through movies, I wanted to go for something that not a ton of people have seen, but that's not extremely obscure, and just something that I really like. And so I looked through a lot of the movies that are in my top 100 list that a lot of people, and especially the people on this panel, know more than one or maybe two of this group had seen, besides myself, just so that we could see from people rewatching it, from people having a first time. But this was a movie I saw when it first came out that I really enjoyed, and then I rewatched it near the end of last year, and I just thought it was so much better on a rewatch, and then I rewatched it again in preparation for this, and I think the more times I rewatch it, just the more I get from that movie and the more interesting I think it is. But I think, yeah, it's got very strong performances, a ridiculous concept, but the way it uses that concept to deal with like very serious and human themes, very impressive to me. Yeah, I just think it's a really cool and underseen movie that I wanted to talk about. And because I was talked out of Tequila and the Bee.
Who said that? Did I talk you out of it? Oh, I would have loved to rewatch Tequila and the Bee. It's been so long. So
bring me back in a little bit. I'll do it.
Yeah, screw Koho. Koho doesn't watch movies on that potato sack. Okay. No. So this movie does something really smart because the first start of it, I was out. I was out by a large. I didn't love the start of it because it's a ridiculous concept. It really is. But when they tie that concept into the real human element to it, the monsters mean nothing at that point. Like, that's the thing. Like, I was like, what the how are you going to connect this and where are you going to go with it all? But how real that, like, connection is. And again, you talk about it as much as you want. Again, if you haven't seen it, go check it out before you watch this. I don't know why you're watching 5 movies if you've never seen some of them, but glad you're here. But there's one problem in this movie for me. I don't take Jason Sudeikis as that guy. It's the one gripe that I have from this movie. If they cast anybody else, I can't take him as an asshole, like an over the top. Like that.
The point? Don't you think that's the point of casting him? Because he
maybe
is TV's Ted Lasso. I mean, he wasn't at that point, but like he is
right.
Traditionally, it presents as being a sort of nice,
like a very
cut guy, and that's what you think he is for the first part of the movie.
Yeah,
I wasn't even that crazy about the movie, but I'm talking to you.
It's the way that when the movie starts, Hathaway's character is the like broken, shitty, terrible person, and Sudeikis is like, I'm just the happy-go-lucky guy in town. And then seeing that shift where he turns out to be the really bad person, and the way you can see that gradual, and this is another thing that on a rewatch, like,
maybe
when you know that whole thing is coming, you can see the bits and pieces of it in him as it builds to that. Whereas, like, on a first watch, it might feel a bit more sudden, but like it's there throughout, and just seeing the way that they shift from one to the other, I think is fantastic.
It's the classic dynamic that's being done in movies recently of the nice guy. Turns out he's not actually the nice guy, and that his, niceness in its way is toxic because he's only being nice because he wants something. And once he realizes he's not going to be able to get what he wants, full blown, full on fire.
Scott,
as
that one movie you watched at Sundance.
Well, that is one. The movie that is a spiritual following up of. Yes, again, it's.
I guess where you're correct. I guess it all started back. This trend probably started 2013. Frozen was the first that good guy's not really a good guy; it's a bad guy. Mm-hmm. The trend might be farther, but that's the one that I remember being shocked from when I first watched it. I guess you're right, because now looking through that lens of being maybe the correct choice, because of him showing up at the apartment all the time and doing it and saying, "Oh, well, you wanted me to do it," and that stuff, and the stuff builds, makes a little bit more sense. Okay, so maybe I didn't dislike the casting as much as maybe that's the correct choice. Maybe I just don't want to see. I have not seen Ted Lasso. Maybe I just don't want to see Jason Sudeikis be that character. Maybe that's my take.
Fun, funny comedy guy.
I like Jason Sudeikis. He's the guy that can make me laugh at anything.
You're a truly irredeemable asshole.
Yeah. Because I think where the interesting I think where most people get into this movie is for me it was the monsters look ridiculous. The what is this her stuck in it. But then to realize what's going on and what the monsters actually indicate and the freedom that gets released from it, I end up enjoying a lot. Once it's switched, once it was like, what the hell? I was like, how are you going to resolve this movie? Like, it makes no sense to me, and then it made perfect sense to me. So I thought it was an interesting time. Dylan, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I saw this movie for the first time around when it came out. I think like just after, like maybe a year after, and then it was on Netflix, and I discovered it. And I knew nothing about it, and I really enjoyed it. On this watch, I still really liked it, but I think there are some aspects towards the end when it sort of revealed like what's happening. I start to like I have a little bit of nitpicks. Like I'm not a huge big of a fan of like because you said it is a ridiculous concept and I'm completely okay with it. I would have been fine if they just didn't explain how it actually happened, but like when you actually find out, it felt like so shoehorned in, like the explanation of how like, oh, she got struck by lightning. Fuck it. I don't know.
How did they not remember that they got struck by lightning in this place like so many years ago?
Scott, maybe your memory doesn't work too good after you've been, I don't know, struck by lightning.
Okay, sure. That's a convenient explanation, I guess.
That is one thing that I was just like, well, fuck it. Why don't you just write it on the wall? Like,
he has the toy of the exact robot, right? Like, how do you not recall? Oh, this kind of.
And the drawing, wasn't that drawing of like the monster she is or whatever? The drawing of it or something. I'm like, why don't you just fucking write it on the damn wall and tell me what the twist is? Like, it was so honest, forced upon.
That one scene is the one thing keeping it from being a 5-star movie for me. Is that scene being?
Because they even have the conversation of like, oh yeah, I remember this place. It was like a construction site or something when we were kids or whatever. So they remember stuff about the place even, but they don't remember this like massive event that happened to them. Anyway, sorry, Dylan.
No, it's fine. Yeah, so that kind of bothered me. It felt like it didn't need to really be there because it was like they don't even harp on it. They just kind of move along. So it doesn't really hurt the movie too bad for me, but it was a little annoying. Also, like Jason Sudeikis's motivations in it. Like I think he's great in the movie, but there's a certain part where it's like his character just all of a sudden yells like, you know, your life has always been amazing and mine like does not or whatever. And this like we've only seen her life kind of sucking currently. Like it felt like a little bit like it came out of nowhere, and it was just like I needed to give him extra motivation or whatever. So he picked the plot of, oh, your life is so much better than mine or whatever. It was a little annoying, but yeah, so I have nitpicks like that, but I think Jason Sudeikis is fantastic in it as his Anne Hathaway. I think the casting of him, Jason Sudeikis is like fantastic because of everything we said, just like him playing against type. That was the first time I ever seen him in like a super dramatic role like that, and he is playing a truly monstrous character in like every way, and he is completely selling it. Like I thought he was like amazing on it in the movie.
Plus, his switch is really gradual. Like it starts like you see the moment, like it starts slipping into like the. It's kind of like the door shuts and then the real person's there. Like there are two different people on the outside, and like he makes the switch like.
Here's the thing. One thing I noticed because this is my second time watching it is like he's not even when you first meet him. It almost doesn't even seem like he's trying to hide it that much because he says these random things that just feel like very passive aggressive and like mean, and then he would like just be like a douche to his friends or whatever, and it's like
he just randomly yells at I think Joel is his name, and then like condescends Tim Blake Nelson all the time.
Yeah.
What was going on with the Joel character? Like it seems like he is kind of just a tool of the plot because he shows up, they have a little, hookup or whatever, him and Anne Hathaway, and then kind of when Jason Sudeikis really things start to kick in, shit starts to go down, is when he like sees them together, and it's like, oh, now he's jealous, and but then he doesn't even really play that much of a role in the rest of the movie. I don't know. I just kind of felt like he was there just so we could like move this along to the next step in terms of Jason Sudeikis' descent into madness or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a very good question.
I think you hit the nail on the head, kind of, because you left the two people to watch it twice around. You know what? You got a good point. Scott, you seem to be like the most negative, I would say, on the movie. So tell us what you thought.
I mean, I do think it does the whole nice guy, toxic masculinity thing better than some movies, and makes its stance on the issue pretty clear. And I think like the way that like intersects with the power dynamic of I'm controlling this robot, right? Like I think that is pretty on point. I just think like to your point, it's like they are very interested in telling a human story underneath all of this. It seems like they're just way more interested in that and therefore did not put a whole lot of effort into the actual sci-fi monster part of it. Because, there's these like plot holes that we're kind of bringing up. And there were some other ones too that were just like questionable to me. Also, how does she go to South Korea at the end? Like how can she afford to get there? Like you think she's like going off of tips from the bar that she was working at? Like these like things just started to kind of accumulate for me. And it's like
my assumption was always like, I don't think it really matters how she gets there because the plot doesn't like as much as you could say like the plot doesn't concern itself with things like that or like a few other things and that's a bad thing to me. I'm like it doesn't really matter how she gets there because it's what she does there that's really important. And like if she really wants to get there, she's gonna get there no matter what she has to
but
do.
I guess she's lucky, I guess, that what she did worked, right? Because I don't think there was any sort of guarantee that that was going to be the case, right? Like, how did she know that?
I mean,
that
you got to take risks in this life, Scott.
Sure,
but
I just feel like
if you take a risk, you too can one day throw Jason Sudeikis into the sun.
I went into this movie and like I'm not a big monster movie type person at all, so I was like not interested in that aspect of it. And so I feel like I should have liked it more because it doesn't focus as much on that aspect of it. It is more about the human element of it. But I was like, it just kind of feels like a lot of window dressing some of the sci-fi elements of it. Like if you want to just tell this story about toxic masculinity and the intersection with that and like power dynamics or whatever, I don't know that you even need to like have this whole robot element because the sci-fi, I mean you can, but the whole sci-fi elements of it just weren't that engaging to me. Because there were just like some logical inconsistency. So I still liked the movie. Like it's an interesting movie. I'm glad that I watched it. But like it just feels like one major aspect of the movie feels a little bit half-baked for me. But I think the performances are fine. I don't have a problem with Jason Sudeikis. Again, I think it was actually kind of clever casting. I like Anne Hathaway.
Yeah, I sound like a dumbass now. I think it's correct casting.
No, I mean there are other people who are going to have that reaction. I think. I mean, I feel like this is a non sequitur, but another movie that he's in, Sleeping with Other People. I feel like in that movie, that's the example of he is way too much of a nice guy to play this role. Like I couldn't believe him in that movie in that role, but this movie, I think they're weaponizing that to do what they want.
I may be the only one, but I kind of did want to see like Jason Sudeikis go into the sun or something at that point in this movie. He didn't. I didn't see where he goes. I know he goes far, but one of the most like ways to like kill someone like a person is just yeeting them. Like like you think about like somebody stabs or shoots, this guy gets yeeted, and I just wanted to see where he
gets literally like just throws him. Movie ends.
Yeah. I'm surprised she was able to pick him up immediately, like first try as well. She didn't like fumble around or whatever trying to.
Yeah, she just like oh, I got him. He looked tiny. I was like, what the? And I just love a small Jason Sudeikis like put me down. I'm like, okay. So two people saw it, two people didn't. Cam said it's not 5 stars. Cam, what is it?
It's a 4.5 out of 5. It still makes my top 100 favorite movies of all time. I think this movie's fantastic and very rewatchable. But yeah, not a 5, 4.5.
Sure.
Dylan, you've seen it now twice. What's your rating?
Yeah, I'd still keep it at 4 stars, which is what I had it at originally. Yeah, I think it overall. I think it. I just have some like minor like nitpicks with like this where the story goes and like some character decisions and stuff, but. Overall, I think the movie as a narrative like works, so I can ignore that stuff.
I'm at a 3.5. Liked it overall. Could go up on a rewatch since you're saying there's more things that you can unpack from a rewatch. But 3.5. Definitely didn't have a bad time with it. Definitely enjoyed it for what it was. Again, and for being completely out when it started, to be honest with you, I was also like, oh, I don't give a shit about Anne Hathaway being this monster, whatever. I can just imagine kaiju fans or whatever. Kaiju fans like coming across this and thinking like it's a modern day monster movie, and it's like this actually emotional, like in your feelings thing. And like, what the fuck?
The thing is, like, if you go to Colossal looking for a monster movie, like, sure, it is there, but that's not what the movie's about. The monster
doesn't explain. Hold on.
Metaphor.
I know we gave scores. Does it explain why they just choose Seoul as the stomping ground?
Because what they were doing, the diorama was a diorama of Seoul, right?
Diorama.
Okay. I might have missed that part, but I'm just like, well, this random fucking city you decide to stomp in every day. Like,
it is very contrived. Like, again, this is kind of what we're saying. They happen to have the toy robot and everything. It's like, okay.
Couldn't have picked like fucking like No Plains, Montana, where no one lives, and just stomp around for a little bit. Jeez, these people scream every night because you will show up.
The thing I think is like it's very important to the story that it is a place with a ton of people.
Well, yeah,
because like it's because
he falls down and
scares Hathaway into changing herself at first. And it makes Sudeikis
you can just see the people of Seoul and says, "I'm so glad she got over what she got rid of him." Like, thank God, because I'm really tired of people dying in this town. Scott, what's your rating?
I do want to say I did like kind of the resolution of her relationship with Dan Stevens and how she basically kind of just like, screw you, like, you're the one who kicked me out or whatever, so I don't owe you anything. I thought that was good, and it was like it shows growth of the character of like, I'm not gonna even like lead this dude on anymore, like I'm just gonna block these toxic people out of my life, kind of. But anyway, I'm between a 3 and a 3.5. I'm feeling nice today, so I'll give it a 3.5.
Wow. No, I've been on the show a lot with Scott. I would guess that would have been a 3.
I'm Michael Campbell. 5. I don't know.
Well, I haven't actually rated it on Letterboxd yet. Maybe when I actually go.
Yeah, right. That's fair. So we're going to go with the next movie we're going to talk about is Ang Lee's second greatest movie behind Hulk. We're going to talk about The Ice Storm. So Scott, take it away.
Yeah, I chose this movie because I think it's super underrated. And Cody has brought it up a couple times on not this movie, but on the top 100 that we did recently. You brought up Mystic River, and I know you love that movie. And I believe I said at the time, I think that Mystic River's fine, but there's a trilogy of like the New England family drama that is even better in my opinion. One is Manchester by the Sea, which I think is a commonly well known and appreciated movie.
Depression by the Sea, yeah.
One is in the Bedroom, which again I think more people have started watching because of Todd Field and Tar. And then this one is maybe like the least, and this is the other one, The Ice Storm, and this is like maybe the least sort of talked about still. When people think of Ang Lee, they think of Brokeback Mountain, they think of Crouching Tiger, they think of Life of Pi. They don't think of like him doing this very American film, because this is his first American film, I guess. Yeah, of his career. Obviously, he did Sense and Sensibility before this, but I guess that would qualify probably as a British film. But but basically, it's set in the 70s. It's the story of a couple of families, and in Connecticut, and sort of their interaction over the course of the holidays, the winter holidays. And it is a family tragedy, right? Like, again, I'm comparing it to movies like Mystic River and Manchester by the Sea. So you kind of know what you're getting into. But, you have one family, it's Kevin Kline, Joan Allen, Christina Ricci, and Tobey Maguire. And then the other family is Sigourney Weaver, Jamie Sheridan, Elijah Wood, and then I don't know what the name of the young boy actor is, but
the kid from Jumanji. That's all I know.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
But Kevin Kline is having an affair with Sigourney Weaver, and then Christina Ricci is like a pervy teenager who's kind of like tormenting both Elijah Wood and the kid from Jumanji, who are both kind of like having a crush on her. But it's just one of those movies where like there's just like a series of events that happen, and it's all building towards like when the tragedy is going to happen. And I just think it's a very sad but beautiful movie. I think it captures the time and place really well. Like, I think it's kind of stunning that Ang Lee, coming from Taiwan, was able to make a movie like such an American movie. Honestly, like it is set in the 70s, and it is I mean, it is more than anything. Probably it's about like this time in American life. Nixon, Watergate, and everything is kind of like underscoring a lot of the movie, and it's just like a period of people doing whatever they feel like just to feel something, kind of. There's a whole set piece in the movie that takes place with like this swingers party. They go to Allison Janney's house, and it's like nobody really knows what they're doing, but they're just like searching for something, right? And yeah, I think it's a really engaging movie despite being really sad. It is one that I come back to. Like, they did this on the rewatchables, which is kind of weird. Like, again, you wouldn't think of this movie as being like a rewatchable, but somehow it is. I just think on the whole it shows Ang Lee's versatility as a director, which is like maybe my favorite thing about him as a director is he's done so many different types of things and shown that he can excel in most any genre. But also the performances are really great. Like, Joan Allen is somebody that I don't understand why she doesn't act anymore. She has, I think, 3 Oscar nominations, 2 or 3, and yet she has been in like 2 movies in the last decade. I don't know why she went away. I think she's a phenomenal actress, and she's really good in this. Kevin Kline, of course, you think of him more as playing a comedy role, but like he, nails the dramatic stuff. Although he is kind of like bumbling in a way that like you come to expect from him. And yeah, Tobey Maguire is also really good. It's a great movie that I think more people should check out. What did y'all think?
I'm fully on board with this movie, but the Mystic River, you talking about that in this is like not even close in my opinion. But we'll leave it there. If Kevin Kline walked to the door and when Christina Ricci's in there,
Is that my daughter?
like that might have been on board, but he's not. Yeah, I think the one thing I will give it, where it tackles like the actual American like time, this movie feels like a 90s movie doing the 70s. Like, it's all over it, and it's like very like tacky, and I get that. That's what you're supposed, like, that's where you're going, but it's just, that's one thing that overall the performances are really strong. The overall movie, not a movie that I absolutely like loved, but it's not a movie that I was just like, what the fuck are we watching? It was a complex story. Like, it was not a complex story. It's the family dynamic, but it's somebody that seemed like they like grew up with this family dynamic, like because of how like attention to detail it was throughout the movie, which made it work for me. That the kids are slipping out of control. Like, I wouldn't say slipping out of control, but they're doing their own things, and parents that really don't know how to get themselves in together and have a normal life with them, and having to work through, like, there's even a point where like Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver are like in bed together, and he's like talking and blah blah blah, and like it was one of like the most real like statements is, I already have a husband. Oh, you're right. Yeah, I have no interest in having a second. We're having an affair, and let's leave it alone at that. And it's just like,
he's trying to like tell her about his day.
Yeah, he's trying, because he can't have that, like, he doesn't have that like conversation or whatever with his wife, so he wants to like have it with somebody else, and she's like, I have no interest in that. So overall, I think the kids' acting was, again, for what they grew up to be, great, but at that time there was still weakness. I think Christina Ricci's really good in the movie. Tobey Maguire is Tobey Maguire at this point for me. Everybody else's thoughts. As my thoughts, I thought it was overall. Again, I had to look up the director. I didn't look at it when you gave it to me. I looked at it. I'm like, wow, Ang Lee did this? That's a little shocking to me, because I just didn't think that how he knew the American dynamic so well. Like,
one thing I forgot to say I want to add real quick is that I love how the movie looks as well, because it's so like gray and like it's very like austere looking again, and then that is contrasted with the end of the movie, and spoilers, but when Elijah Wood gets killed, and like he is standing there, and all of a sudden, for the first time, it feels like in the movie there is an explosion of light, right? And it's this power line that's like exploding, and the irony, right, is like he stops to like see something that he perceives as like kind of strangely beautiful, right, in a world where they are not seeing much of that. And in that 5 seconds or whatever where he stops, he's not even doing anything particularly dangerous, right? He's standing at a far distance away from him, but he stops and looks like this moment of beauty, and bang, it zaps him and he dies.
Yeah. So when I had heard about this movie, it was sort of, I had heard, like you guys were saying, the comparisons to others, like movies like Manchester by the Sea, and I was going in expecting something like very broad and melodramatic, and so I was actually like very pleasantly surprised with how like it does go into like the melodrama later in the movie, but it's mostly like actually very quiet and intimate and atmospheric. Really, like I love, like, I think the sound design is like surprisingly really great. Like there's just certain parts where like the wind is just blowing through like the trees, and they're obviously covered in ice, and you just hear the twinkling of the ice, or the ice crunching when the train is moving at the beginning. It's all really fantastic stuff. Yeah, by the time it's one of those ones where it's like you just slowly feel it like creeping up on you, and then when all the melodrama like finally hits at the end and Elijah Wood dies, it just all like releases, and it hit me really hard, like especially not even like the part when they bring the body back to the family, but at the part that really got me was like the very end of the movie where they're all together and they see Tobey Maguire come out of the train, and they all look happy for a second, and then they all get in the car, and then there's just this moment of silence, and then Kevin Kline just breaks down, and then the movie cuts to black and it ends. That was like, yeah, that was crazy. Like,
because like when you really think about it, it's like all of them almost in their own way contributed in some capacity to like this happening. Like, the parents weren't there for the kid. The little brother was screwing around with Christina Ricci. Like they're all doing something else and, trying to distract themselves from reality, the depressing nature of reality at this time. And the effect that it has is that Elijah Wood just can wander out in the middle of the snow and get killed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I am not American, as neither is Dylan. And so hearing these pre-descriptions of like, yeah, the American family dynamics of the 90s, I was like, oh boy, I don't really subscribe to those ideals or am fully aware of what they are. And also I was definitely worried going into this because I had heard it described as like an extremely melodramatic version of like a hangout movie, in a way of like you are just kind of watching people exist for a while, which I know like that's a lot of what movies are, but like when there's not really an extreme driving force behind the plot at any point, I oftentimes lose interest in a movie like that. But I was actually pleasantly surprised by this movie. I actually liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I think there's some very solid performances. I struggle with Kevin Kline when he's being a dramatic actor, because I don't even love him as a comedic actor a lot of the time when I see him doing comedic things, and then just
Don't
hearing
like Wild Wild West.
I haven't seen that one, but
Okay.
like hearing Kevin Kline doing his same voice that he always has, and trying to be dramatic at points, I'm like, well, that's not working a ton for me at times, just because to me, I'm like, that is the voice of the guy from A Fish Called Wanda.
That's true. I'm with you on that one.
But don't you think the casting was intentional?
Oh no. I mean, I'm sure the casting was intentional, but
Maybe this one they should have picked somebody else for it.
But no, I thought it was really interesting. Yeah, just the way everything progresses, the way that at first, like, you have Weaver's character dealing with Christina Ricci being around, and you're like, okay, she like sure, she's like having an affair, but she seems to be like a mostly conservative, prudish woman who's like, stay away from my children. I want nothing of that nature happening in my house. And then less than an hour later, and you find out that she's hosting a swinger party at her house, basically, and you're like, interesting. Okay. But like, I think it progresses in a really interesting way. To me, I think Christina Ricci is probably my favorite performance in the movie. I think she's very interesting because like her character is very much just like, yeah, it's a teenage girl who is like learning her sexuality and wanting to like explore it and be expressive. And basically everyone around her is like, how dare you be a person trying to do these things? You're a child. And it's like, and then like obviously it goes in a very weird and at times a little bit unsettling direction, considering how young the kid from Halloween H2O is, because he's also in that. But yeah, and then like Tobey Maguire, I think just like the really sad nature of his story, like when he's first introduced and you have him talking about like, oh, I like her, and it's like, you didn't tell your best friend, did you? Because you know that every time you tell him that you like a girl, he bangs her before you can. You're like, oh god. And then you meet him and you're like, yeah, this is the exact douche that I expected when I heard that statement about it. Which I think Krumholtz is so good in his like few little moments there, because he's the one character that is truly just like comedic in this movie. But yeah,
of course he's there. He goes to like the house to meet up with her, and like of course he's there.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was really interesting too, is because like that the most uncomfortable scene for me in like the entire movie was when Christina Ricci and the Jumanji H2O boy goes into the bat like to show each other whatever, and then he starts like losing like screaming, and then the mom Sigourney Weaver comes
Sigourney
out.
Weaver walks in, yeah.
Yeah, and she goes, "Your body's a temple." Why she's also begging your father, like not her husband,
and is that I think it's that night or like the next day within the timeline.
Yeah, they're on the
is when
screen.
you host a party that everyone in the neighborhood is going to be at, where they have sex.
Well, that was at Allison Janney's house, right? But like she does go to it, yeah.
Yeah.
And like they were being so obvious about it also when they were like at the swingers party is like one small thing is like Kevin Kline is like walking over to her and like talking in like kind of a loud voice about it, or I think it just like underscores that these people just don't even really know what they're doing. They're just like trying to, feel something.
And it's crazy. Christina Ricci is like 2 years removed from Casper at this point, and like comes in and gives this kind of a performance of like a real like really like smart performance, like by her like the age she is and able to understand what subject matter she's acting about. So overall,
I was like, damn, do I gotta start watching Yellow Jackets and not Wednesday? Because why would I watch Wednesday?
Because of Jenna.
Yeah, but I had my doubts, but overall I was pleasantly surprised with this movie. Again, knowing nothing about it prior, so I really enjoyed it. Anybody else want to say anything before we score it?
Just watch the other movies in the trilogy, and then
I've already seen Manchester by the Sea and
send me your rankings.
I will tell you
New England family tragedy rankings. I think for me, I would put this one number one. I would, and then
that's crazy
in the bedroom, and then I'd put Manchester. But they're all great.
It's not trilogy. Do it the 4 because Mystic River's higher. Mystic River, Manchester by the Sea, this movie, and I haven't seen the other.
Is that my son or my daughter in there?
Is that my daughter in there? Stop touching my daughter with the Richard Nixon mask on. Is that my daughter in the Richard Nixon mask? Is that my daughter in the Richard Nixon?
Yeah, that was.
Of course,
was that subtle enough for y'all? The Richard Nixon mask.
Yeah, we're in the 70s, and you need to know it by Richard Nixon. Yeah, okay. All right, Scott, what's the rating?
I moved it. I had it at 4.5. I moved it up to 5 stars. I think it's great. I think it's in the top tier of Ang Lee's movies with Crouching Tiger and Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. So I love it.
I will give it 4 stars. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm planning on revisiting this one. Dylan.
Yeah, I'd give it 4.5 stars. I think I really enjoyed it. This type of quiet, intimate drama is like the stuff that I really, really enjoy. So yeah, this was definitely a good watch.
Cam.
Yeah, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I give it a 4 out of 5 in my ranking, and of the Ang Lee films I've seen, it is a top 4 Ang Lee film.
I think that's the best I've done with one of my movies that I've brought to the show.
4 of them. You know what? I'd say it's top 2 of the Ang Lee films I've seen. This is better than Hulk and Life of Pi. A very controversial statement that no one will have any problem.
And Michael gives it 4 shrimp on the Barbie. Okay.
Crikey.
Crikey. Okay, so next is where 2 Canadians and 2 Americans get to talk about an Australian film. Lincoln Fright. I think I know exactly why Michael picked this movie. Basically, I think it's like, that could be, but I think it's like, I don't know of many movies, but I think this shows a very glimpse of Australian life, like not like in his everyday life, but like there's no mistaking where this is filmed. It's no mistaking the dialogue. It's no mistaking the lifestyle that some of the people live in there. So this movie was wild to me. The number one, like I told these guys before we hopped on, I Googled, do Australians actually eat kangaroos? Because I thought kangaroos was just not something you chew, like you eat. I just thought that. That's my mistake. That's my bad. They clearly do, and all supermarkets in Australia have kangaroo meat, and you can get different cuts.
There's places, I don't know if they have any of this. There are places in Canada where you can get kangaroo.
That's just crazy to me. But who wants to explain this movie? Does anyone want to explain it?
I can if you need.
Go ahead, Scott.
It's a pretty simple setup. This dude.
Yeah, it's very simple.
This dude is a teacher. He is kind of like a teacher in this place, like this small town that he doesn't really like because he basically just got randomly assigned there and now he's like stuck in some contract basically. So he is going to Sydney, however, for the holidays to visit his girlfriend, and he ends up stopping in this town, like in the middle of nowhere in the outback. He gambles all his money away and gets stuck there. And then the rest of the movie is basically him going on a bender with these like drunken buffoons who live in the town and basically seem to spend all of their days just drinking an insane amount of beers, hunting kangaroo, doing gay stuff also maybe. It just gets wild. It is like an Australian Safdie Brothers movie. Like it just like keeps your anxiety like pumping for most of the movie. It has some Deliverance vibes as well for sure. But yeah, that's the description of the movie, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree. And after somebody that just saw Deliverance for the first time, definitely got that vibe. Definitely got some of that vibe. I didn't love this movie. I'm gonna be one of the people that didn't. I did not love this. One, I guess maybe if I knew a little bit more about like Australia, like people and like what goes on. Let me just tell you, Mike and Jake are like, and Kelly are not these people. Overall, that we know of, because man, could you imagine? Like, I can't do this match this week because I'm going out kangaroo slaughtering. But overall, I think the acting overall is just there's like slow points, points that I just didn't really enjoy. There's a 20-minute segment, I would say, or it felt like that long, of them just let's start this. They run down a kangaroo. Like, in the car, like, they just blast this thing while it's chasing down. And then there's a 20-minute segment of it, and then you're shooting these things to fucking
And
like
isn't there, like, a
multiple
full-on
times.
fist fight with a
Walking
kangaroo
right
as
up
well?
to it.
Am I making that up, or
Yeah.
doesn't one of the dudes
He
straight up
slits
just,
its throat,
punch a
yeah.
kangaroo in
Yeah.
the face and slit its
Yeah,
throat?
Yeah.
He like walks right up to it and has to like wrangle
Yeah.
it with his
I don't know if the
hands.
part where he slit its throat was real, or because I don't know if that would have
Yeah,
been part
I
of
was
the
gonna say,
hunt.
for the
But yeah,
people at home who haven't seen this, who I assume is everyone, it should be noted that this scene where they're hitting kangaroos with their car and shooting kangaroos is almost guaranteedly not done with any sort of special effects.
oh no, they
Yeah, it's
put
real.
No,
Yeah, they
it's
put a
real,
thing in the credits for the movie right when it cuts to black. It's like, by the way, because I know this is what you've been thinking. This was a part of a hunt, and all the footage was taken from a real life kangaroo
This
hunt.
is the opposite of the
So-
opening thing of RRR, where they're like, "No, insert 30 animals here
Yeah.
were harmed."
Exactly.
It's
Yeah,
like,
no,
we-
they're like, we fucking butchered all of them.
Which,
Like,
by the way,
and-
why would they put that at the end of the movie and not at the beginning? Like, it's like
Yeah,
we
they're
already
like,
saw.
oh, you saw us. They don't warn you that it happens. They're just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
someone's
that
sitting there clearly, someone's sitting there and be like, huh, these just great effects. And then get in there like, the fuck? Are you fucking serious? Like,
They-
yeah, it's
Like,
brutal. It's like just and you see these things just like die over and over and over again. Basically, they like they shoot it. It's wild. It's wild. Again, if there's a movie out there that they hunt koalas, consider me out on that too. I'm out on this. Like, I consider kangaroos because I don't.
also like straight up kill people.
Well, I'm fine with that. They're cute and adorable, and if they don't touch them. Don't leave them alone. Let them
Leave
crawl
your
up the
face.
things. But like for me to sit there as not Australian and watch like kangaroos, I think of them as like those that you don't mess with, and for them to slaughter was wild. Again, didn't understand the Australian life that much. Didn't really love it. I think Crocodile Dundee I liked it a little bit more than this movie. I can see elements of why you might like people might like it a little bit, but it was just not for me. Any part actually worked for you guys?
I like
I
this
think-
movie a lot.
Yeah, go ahead.
Of
Dylan.
course, Dylan. Like,
Of course you fucking
I
did.
was like, okay, cool. Michael's not going to be here. I'm going to be the one guy who likes this movie. Listen, I'm a big fan of this movie. If you follow my letterbox, maybe know I'm a big fan of The Lighthouse. So you want to pitch a movie that's just 90% people going insane and drinking and losing their minds and losing track of time, I'm in. But so I enjoyed this movie and like sort of the descent into debauchery. I thought was like really well done. Yeah, it's hard. I don't want to go back to it, but it's really hard. I can watch all fake cruelty in movies all I want. When real life cruelty like actually finds its way into the movie, it's really hard for me to like stomach it and watch that. So the extended kangaroo murder scene is pretty hard for me to watch and kind of brings down the movie as a whole for me. So yeah, it's kind of the extent of where my thoughts lie on the movie. But overall, I enjoyed it. Besides that,
I
yeah,
just
sorry,
ahead.
if you want to.
Oh, okay. Well, I struggle with what the point of it all is. That's really the issue for me is yeah, it's like you're not bored watching it and like, especially during the beginning is
You're
it's
not
pretty
bored.
gripping. Like watching him doing the gambling and all that. Like I was like all in on that stuff. And then it's just like it keeps going, and then he gets away, but then at the end of the movie, it's like, well, I'm sorry that I looked at you people with such disdain or whatever. Is like kind of the attitude that he had. I'm like, no, like you should be looking at them with like I don't understand the point. I kind of wanted Michael to be here, especially so because I'm sure there are some nuances as far as like, how this portrays Australian people in the outback area in particular. But if this movie was trying to be about this guy who has a really primitive view of the outback who comes out there and then sees a different side of it and changes his viewpoint. Uh, it I don't know why that was the road that it tried to go down because these people are crazy and I would not say that they are humane individuals and that this guy should change his opinion about them if his opinion was that everyone in the Outback is crazy. So it works, I guess, on a purely visceral level of like being a horror movie in a way, like it's sort of surreal Outback set horror movie, but like beyond that, I don't really understand thematically what the movie was trying to do.
Yeah, I'm with you. Again, I think that's the major point of it. There wasn't like a guiding like through it. I really didn't like even any of the stuff at the beginning. To tell you the truth, I was bored. Like I think it's like a nice being like. Go ahead.
I don't think that the lead actor is that great either. I think his
Right.
performance, like, there's just not much to the character. It seems like I didn't understand a lot of his motivations. I mean, it's very simple. Again, it's like I hate that I am in this contract or whatever, and I don't want to be teaching where I am. Again, this is his whole like he's biased against like this, I guess, other Outback town that he's teaching in or whatever. I guess is the message supposed to be it could be worse, right? You could be living in this place. I don't know, but I didn't think he gave a very convincing performance.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
I didn't like this movie. I'm gonna be straight up. I did not enjoy this film. Yeah, I didn't think the lead actor was all special. I think the beginning was the most interesting part, but that wasn't very hard. He loses all his money in a gambling game that they never once explain how it works. You just watch the people with a stick throwing some coins and they pick up money willy-nilly, it seems. And then like they give the little bit of setup of like who he is and where he comes from. And then like he's trying to make money, he's trying to leave, and then he finally makes the money to leave, and then where does he go? He ends up right back there, and it's like, why are we wasting our time then? Everything that just happened was pointless. And again, maybe that's the thing, is like no matter what you do, you'll never escape from the terrible life that you're living in this terrible backwater Australian town. And then like they straight up murder kangaroos IRL and film it. And then as Scott alluded to, like there's just random gay subplot for truly no reason. It means nothing other than just like to kind of make every character involved in it less likable in various ways.
I mean, he basically like rapes him, right? Like, I mean, they are completely intoxicated when they do this. Like,
I don't remember this part. I'm confused.
Well, it's not explicitly shown, but like it is when he and Donald Pleasance like go back to Donald Pleasance's house and like fall asleep, but then when they wake up in the morning, it's like heavily implied that like there was some sort of encounter between the two of them.
And I think that's my major drawback is like there is that not main character that I care for or like draws me into the story to like, oh, you're a fish out of water. You feel like he just goes along with everything basically, and it's fine. But like, I needed more of a contrast for me to like get fully behind it. But
how about the scene where Donald Pleasance is talking to him about like the one guy's daughter and like all the things that she likes or whatever sexually, and he's just like explicitly going on, and the guy walks outside to like pee or something, like he's peeing out back, and Donald Pleasance like just walks right up to him as he's standing there peeing and continues telling him about how this chick is like into all kinds of freaky stuff, sexual. Wild.
Yeah, the movie's wild. Michael, I think, has this at 5 stars.
He does.
Dylan, what's your rating? Because you're the closest to liking this movie. So,
I'm torn between. I'll give it a 3.5.
Okay. Kaleb, what's your rating?
You know, since we started talking, I have reassessed, and it went down. I was gonna give it a 2. It's a 1.5.
Fair.
Okay. I'm at a 2. It's probably 1.5 to be real, but be nice, I'll do it
Also,
too.
is that
It was,
No,
it
it-
was getting all the confirmation and talking more and more about the fact that they really did just straight up murder a shit ton of kangaroos and film it. That I was like, nah.
Yeah, you know what? It's a 1.5. I can't get behind killing kangaroos. I just can't. It's not my cup of tea, and that will be a part that will never sit
Which,
well
like,
with
I
me.
also need to say, like, not to like say that it should be interesting, but like that sequence is shockingly boring for the fact that you are watching a real life kangaroo hunt on film. Like this
Oh,
entire
you're
movie
just
is
waiting
kind
for
of
it to be
really
over,
boring.
basically.
Someone in this community, I don't know, I think it was a Caleb, but one of them asked Michael if he has cows in Australia. I don't remember who said it, I don't know what moment it was. But if you have cows, please stop killing kangaroos, okay? Please, for the love of everything. Scott, where are you at?
I'm giving it 3 stars just because it wasn't boring. You know, it was kind of a fascinating watch, and I guess on a visceral level, like it is effective, but I don't understand if there's anything more to it than that.
All right. So second to last movie we're going to talk about are Tigers Are Not Afraid. Dylan, pick the shortest movie.
Yes.
So, congrats. Go ahead. Tell us why.
Yeah, I remember this is a movie I randomly came across on Shudder, like towards the beginning of the pandemic. I want to say, like it was like March 2020, around there. And yeah, I basically just gave it a shot because like my free trial for Shudder was about to end, and I was like, well, I might as well watch this. And it blew me away. I was just expecting like this sort of just straight up horror film, but it's basically, for those people who don't know what it is or what it's about, which I feel like could be most people, it's like I said at the beginning, it's a Mexican film about the drug wars in Mexico, and it opens with the main protagonist, the girl named Estrella, who's at school. There is an attack from the cartel at her school, which leads to school being canceled. She comes home, and basically, right as she's walking home, she comes across a dead body just on the street. And it's basically just a matter of fact thing for her life. And like, that's how it is there. She's basically doesn't react to it that much because that's how shitty the current situation is right there with the wars going on. And right then we were introduced to like this magical realism aspect where the blood from the body is basically following her down the street. She comes home, and her mother is missing from her house, and she basically becomes homeless and joins with these other estranged kids just living in the street. And yeah, it's basically just about the wars and the ghosts that are created from like the people who are wronged by the cartel, and them basically wanting to get their revenge against them. And it's really heartbreaking, just like a tale of like lost innocence in this time, and just seeing them try to make the best of their situations where they're just on the run from this gang, because they also, I forgot to mention, but she also, one of the other kids steals like the phone and the gun of a drug dealer, and the phone has very incriminating evidence against the guy, but the kid keeps the phone because it has like the only picture that he has of his mother, so he keeps the phone around for that reason. And yeah, it's just a really heartbreaking film. Manages to pack a lot in a very, very short runtime, which I'm interested in hearing everyone's thoughts on that, because there are points where I feel like almost it could have been longer to make certain stuff hit even harder. But overall, I think it's just a phenomenal movie that more people need to check out.
I talk first. So anybody else want to take this to start their overall thoughts on it?
I'll go. Why not? I was actually familiar with this movie before Dylan sent it in, because as I put in the chat, in probably late 2019, once a month, the local like indie movie theater would run a movie trivia bar trivia night that I would go to with the only other person I knew in person that really liked movie trivia, which is one Jack Pinchuk. And we didn't win one night, but we got like high enough place that we still got prizes. And our prize that we got was I got a full-size poster for this movie. I'd never heard of it. I'd never seen it. But I went, here you go. And I went, oh, this poster looks cool. And then someone on a team that did better than us offered to trade me 2 movie passes for the poster. And I went, hell yeah. And I gave it. I still to this day have only paid to see one movie at that theater 4 years later from how many movie passes we won at trivia. But no, I like it. I don't love it. I think it's a very interesting movie. I think the concepts are like very interesting to see play out, and the way that like the magical realism comes into play is something that I find very intriguing. Magical realism is just a thing that I will always find really interesting. I think it's really cool. But I never felt myself getting extremely invested in the story, and I couldn't really figure out why. I just like never felt super connected or like emotionally invested in any of the kids. Like obviously you want everything to work out for them and you want this to be over and you want them to be safe, but I didn't have any like personal motivations or connections to any of the characters to be like, here is specifically why I want you to be okay and why I want you to get out of this. I think the thing that makes this movie really effective and the thing that I like the best with this movie is the part where they kind of are just letting these kids be kids within this situation. Like my favorite scene is the one where they are like hiding out in an old theater and they're having their own like little talent show audition, and the kid comes out and he's like rapping with twinkle lights in his hair, and then the lights go out and he's like, damn it. Like and like when they're just getting to be kids and having fun, I think the one kid who I can't remember what his name is, but the kid who has the stuffed tiger, I think is just so charming and funny, and I really enjoy watching him play around with the stuffed tiger in the most serious of situations where he really shouldn't be. Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and it goes into some very dark places. I didn't love it, but I think I respect what it's going for. It just wasn't totally for me.
I definitely got like, I don't know the inspiration behind it or whatever, but very Del Toro kind of feeling.
That's
with
what I was
like
going to bring up. Yeah.
the horror elements, like the fantasy elements mixing with like the real life situations, like, and I think that's what really worked in this film. I agree with you. Like,
it might have been produced by him. I'll have to double check.
which would make perfect sense. I just feel like I felt like this movie could have really went south for me, but I was really like hooked in on the story because basically, like, to think about these children, like, basically the mom never comes back. Like, she goes to school and the mom never like comes home at that point. Like, you know, and that's like a realization of what happens in that town. And to have like the town keep getting smaller basically because the cartel keeps killing people and people just keep moving away from it. So these kids have to like be in their own like elements. I thought was just like I thought it was just crazy. But like the horror elements that worked into it, that it wasn't like cliche horror or like jump scares or anything like that. Like it was actually like stuff like with real trauma and real stuff behind it.
Like
I thought
the humans are scarier than like the actual monsters and ghosts. Like
right. Yeah. Which is impressive for what world they're able to create. Again, I knew nothing about it. I think the tie-in to like the title of the thing, where it starts with the tiger and like ends with the tiger, I think was very like smart, like storytelling. I think what it is, and the complex and the emotions that this film is able to give you in that runtime is insane to me. Like, movies can try for 2.5 hours to try to give you that much like to care, and this movie does like 83 minutes. So hats off to that. Overall, it like that like that's a world that I'll never I never will understand fully because like I will never be like in that world. But to imagine to be a child and in that world is like one of the most. That was the real horror for me. That there are children on the streets or whatever having to deal with this nightly or daily, and like that's something I will like. It's horrifying to me, and the way the way they're able to tell the story and have those fantasy elements come out kind of like depict like the actual horror of it is I think was brilliant. So I actually really enjoyed this movie way more than I thought I was. I thought it was the movie I was going to dread the most. I think not because I do bad with foreign films normally, like because I'm an idiot. Um, but I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun, as much fun as you can have in this movie because it's a good horror movie, but it's very depressing and very sad. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I not to make this about me, but I was interested in this movie because like half of my what I do in my job is immigration defense, and it's a lot of families and people who have come to the US and fear returning to their home country because of the cartels and gangs. And I mean, we're talking about Mexico and Central America as like all the people that I represent. Um, and it often is kids. And so I found this to be like an interesting watch on that level because, I get to see sort of what it realistically, to some extent, realistically, because again, there is magical elements to it, but the actual reality of their situation is very much um, real. Get to see what that is like, and the fact that is out, that this movie is out there, and it's very uncompromising about the fact that kids are not only experiencing it but involved in it, right? Like, I mean, these kids know how to use like a gun, like they find the guy's gun or whatever, and they know how to use it, right? Like it's you get the sense it's not the first time that they've ever, held or used a gun before, even though they're young kids. Um, and just the way that they conduct themselves in the situations, like the drug dealers and the cartel leaders and the one guy who's the politician that's like the overlord of all this, they interact with the kids just as they would interact with anyone else, right? They don't treat them any differently because they're kids. They treat them with the same level of cruelty, really, that they would anyone else. So I just found it like that aspect of it, like the realistic aspect of it, um, fascinating to see, and maybe not enough movies are telling that side of the story. Um, and then I really did also like the magical realism elements as well because a lot of it is like somewhat simple. Like the idea of having the three wishes, certainly not a new concept. Even like the metaphor of the tiger is kind of like on the nose a little bit, and we see it again at the end of the movie, like Cody pointed out. Um, but like it makes sense because it's about kids, right? And like this is how kids would see situations. They would probably see these types of things in very basic ways. I mean, they are, even though have been forced to grow up in some regards, they are still kids. And so seeing it in a more simple, straightforward, like these metaphors again being played out in a more simple, straightforward way, the whole magical realism aspect of it, the three wishes, like it almost puts you in like a kid's headspace a little bit watching it. And so I appreciated that part of it as well. Um, I think maybe it could have had more length to it, but like I did feel like it packed a surprising punch for how short it is. And again, you have it's structured in a way around the three wishes. Like, she has the three wishes, she's gonna have to use them all at some point. Like you can't really drag that on forever, right? Like she's got to use the wishes. Um, and yeah, so I thought that it was an interesting story. I liked the dynamic of the kids. I appreciated them portraying this real life situation in this sort of uncompromising way, and I found it moving in the end. Like I did, and again, even the idea of like the ghosts coming back, it's a very simple idea in a way. Like when you're a kid, and you think about where do people go after they die? Well, maybe they're ghosts. And the idea of like the ghost coming back to save the day or whatever. It has like this sort of like, you know, revisionism in a way. Like it almost makes me think of like a Inglorious Bastards or something like that, right? Where the victims get to like see their win on the big screen. Like it's not it's not reality. It's not how these things actually go down, but it is a fantasy, and it's a fantasy that is trying to see things in a positive light. So I think it's interesting on a whole lot of levels. I'm glad I watched it. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting movie.
Well, this is also why I love the show, because everybody picked movies tonight that I probably wouldn't have like jumped on my watch list anytime soon. Overall, I'm not saying they're bad; they're just outside the realm of like what I go for. Like the titles, one like no offense, like most of the time the title is like something that gets me like, oh, what is that about? Like the ice storm, man, I don't care about that. It doesn't look like an ice storm to me. The tigers are not afraid. Well, what the fuck should I be afraid of? But overall, I think the story was really smart, and I think it tells like this is a movie that I will recommend to people because I think it just definitely tells a story that one, it's a quick watch. One, if you're not into foreign films, that you get in and you get out. But it also, especially if you like Del Toro of any kind, I think the mix of this is really close to a lot of what he practices in. So, especially the real life scenario with the fantasy elements added to it, I think it's brilliant. Anybody else want to add anything to The Tigers Are Not Afraid? It's not a very long movie, so without giving so much away from it. Okay.
Check it out.
Dylan, what's your rating?
Yeah, like what Cameron said about Colossal. Would be in my top 100 if I were to make one. I love this movie, so this is a 5 stars. 5 star for me.
All right, I'm at 4. I'm at 4 stars. I can definitely see me revisiting this movie. Cam, where are you at?
I liked it. I didn't love it. I give it a 3 out of 5. I think on a rewatch, it could probably go up, but I don't know how likely a rewatch is.
It's 1.5 stars better than Wake and Fright. So just remember that.
And Scott killed some real tigers, then maybe we would have got.
I give it 4 stars. Really cool movie.
All right.
I watched Tigers Are Not Afraid, The Ice Storm, and Wake and Fright back to back to back in one sitting.
And I do that often, yeah.
And I ended on Wake and Fright.
It's hard when I never see movies. It's hard when I never see the movies or know anything about them, really. Because when I do it, I cram them basically to near the episode, so I have the notes and ready to talk about them. And even though I give everybody a month, I give myself like 3 days. But yeah, when you don't know the order, I'm glad I ended with Tigers Are Not Afraid. Ice Storm was the second to last, and then Wake and Fright was how I started it. So kind of glad that
and you look at the average ratings of these movies, and Wake and Fright somehow has an average rating of 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. You're like, why?
Because they love killing kangaroos. The last movie that we'll talk about is The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. The reason, I said it when I started, the reason why I picked this movie overall is when I first watched it, I wanted to get into Westerns. And Westerns are one of the hardest genres for me to get into because a lot are praised, but some don't deserve praise, if I'm being real. And then there are some that, are very unseen. But if I was a trivia player, when the category of Westerns would come up, I would probably shit my pants. Because I don't know what question, because there are so many. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance jumped off for me is because of the performances and the overall story for it. I think it works. With this being said, I still haven't seen Rio Bravo, which I know is like the creme de la creme.
Greatest movie.
Which is on my watch list, but I didn't want to bring that to this because I don't like the never see a movie and then you have to talk about it. Zach Ford is the only one to do that on the show and bring Paper Moon, and it was a home run for me. But Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, Jimmy Stewart, John Wayne. There's more people in this movie that I'm just not pulling.
Lee Marvin.
But Lee Marvin. Overall, this just is a fun Western for me. It just from start to finish really works. I think it's a very accessible Western. I think it it deserves more light on it than most people said. So we'll get into the nitty gritty when I'll start talking about it. What did this movie work for everybody here, or were there people that didn't like it? Curious.
I really liked it. Sorry, you want to go
ahead,
first, Scott?
Yeah.
No, I really enjoyed it. This is my first time watching it. I think this was my first John Wayne movie. Yeah. Because I think I watched like half of Rio Bravo, but and then I got distracted. But it's not
Those are
because I
fighting
didn't
words
like
for Scott.
No. It's because I watched it on DVR, and then the next day one of my parents deleted it. I was like, well, fuck. I guess I have to
There
find
you
somewhere
go.
else. Yeah. But yeah, this movie I thought was really cool. For some reason, I don't know why I had it in my head that it was a legal drama in like the Wild West. I think it was just because I heard the character was a lawyer, but I thought it was really interesting just the way seeing it all like develop and how it's kind of like, it's very atypical, I feel like, for a Western where it's not about like just guns, bang, shoot 'em up. It's like the main character is like very much against that. And he's like, why can't we just like settle this like the old fashioned way with words in court, law and order? But it's like, yeah, I thought all that was like really, really well done. The performances were really fun. I was not expecting it to be sort of as like kind of kooky at parts as it was. Like James Stewart, we were talking beforehand, there are some like really funny parts with James Stewart, like when he has the steak and when he like picks it off the ground and slaps it onto the plate. It's like
steaks in this movie, people eat them like they're Tic Tacs. Like, the marshal comes in and it's
the
just
West,
like,
I assume,
give me
as
3
a Canadian
steaks.
born
Like,
yeah.
Again, we were talking before this, but when Liberty Valance and John Wayne's character, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but are squaring off inside. Well, they're squaring off, and he's like they trip him. Liberty Valance trips James Stewart, and he like falls to the ground. And he's like, "That's actually my steak." He's like, "Well, then pick it up for him." And they're like going at each other, like holding their guns, like doing the whole Western square off. And then Jimmy Stewart just pops in and goes, "Everybody's so trigger happy in this town. Listen, I'll just get it for you." And like picks up the steak and slaps it on the plate. It falls to the ground again, and he like comedy picks it back up and slaps on the table. It's like over the top, just like over Western stuff, but like I believe it from Jimmy Stewart. Like he sets this character of like we don't have to like kill everybody. That just you're ready to pull a trigger and end someone's life just like that. Like and it's him kind of like trying to talk these two out of like this like killing each other, and then he's the one that ends up taking him at the end. Everybody else, Dylan was talking, but I'll pass it back to the group.
Did you have something else you
yeah,
to say,
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Cam.
Yeah, I much like Cody am not very well versed in Westerns. Westerns is not a genre that's particularly caught my eye. I think again because like Western is probably the most American-y America genre that there could possibly be. And as someone not from there, it's kind of insufferable after a while with some of them. But no, I think this movie does a really good job of like setting its stakes in a very simple way, setting up its characters and like their motivations and who they are, and then giving good reason for why they change. Where like when you start, you have Stuart who is like absolutely not going to touch a gun, not going to kill anybody. Let's solve this with our words. No violence is needed. And then he starts to realize he's like, well, maybe violence is the only way to stop this is with violence. And if I don't commit violence, then there will be even more violence, and that's my fault. And so he starts to learn basically out of like he is learning how to murder people because he doesn't want to have to murder people. It's kind of the way it ends up working out. And then just the way it builds while also like not forgetting everything around it, where it doesn't just become what a lot of Westerns I've seen do become, where it's, oh, we have to take down the bad guy. That is now the only thing that is happening in the world of this movie, and there are no other things that exist. Where it still is like, oh no, there's an election, and we have a full debate, and we have this full everything, and it's a great scene because then you have Liberty Valance coming in and trying to just like intimidate everyone into electing him, and they're like, well, no, we're just not gonna do that because you're an asshole. Like just Jimmy Stewart gets the one over on him because he's like, well, yeah, like they elected me because they like me because I'm a reasonable human being and not threatening to shoot them if I don't. But then yeah, you get to the actual like climax of the movie where it happens, and then when you learn the truth behind everything that happened at the end, I think it's a fantastic moment of like seeing where like these characters go after the titular event, and then learning what really happened and all of the situation behind that. At first you're like, well, that's kind of ridiculous, and you go like, then you think about it more, you're like, is it though? Because you sit there, and when it happens at first, should I try not to spoil it, or can I just say it? It's from the
Spoiler.
60s.
You can spoil it, yeah.
Yeah, like, because at first he shoots Liberty, like, you have Jimmy Stewart shooting Liberty Valance, and you don't even really question it. You're like, wow, he got really good with that gun really fast, and I guess he was just able to shoot super ultra criminal. Like, just did it straight through the heart, basically. And then it's like, when you learn that actually in reality it was John Wayne shooting him at the exact same
But
time.
well, let's discuss that. Do you actually think it was John Wayne, or is he covering for him, right? Because he understands that Ransom needs to become the senator, right? He needs to get elected, and he's never going to have the career that he's going to have if he, gets branded as a murderer. Whereas Tom, he doesn't have any greater ambitions except being in this town. So, I mean, I think that's what the whole movie is about, because the journalist is then like, when the fact becomes legend, print the legend, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's exactly what happened is Tom, John Wayne's character, is making the legend fact by saying, "Oh no, I'm the one that shot him." But I don't think that that's actually what happened. Like, I think that that
It's
is,
like you get the respect for being willing to do it without any of
yeah,
the qualms of actually doing it. But
yeah.
to it, which my one thing with that is the point of, I think all the people who are like, yeah, you shot him, is like, well, then he didn't. So why are we still praising him? Like, they don't really address that part of it, but they don't need to.
I love that I finally got, like, I've seen this movie before, but like that, I've heard that quote like majority of my life. When legend becomes fact, print the legend. Like, it's been quoted to me, and like to see it play out in this movie, it's such a badass quote, to be honest with you. Like, I love that line. But yeah,
And
I'm with Scott on that one. Like,
yeah.
the covering for the tale of the thing, it was like, well, this is the West, sir. When legend becomes fact, print the legend. Like, it's just like,
Exactly. The
yeah,
the movie is like a deconstruction of all westerns in a way, right? Because that is
mhm.
what all westerns are, is somebody printing the legend. Like, none of this stuff actually went down, like exactly how it's depicted in these movies and everything. And you can extend it out even further beyond, and like, well, we're romanticizing the old West when this isn't necessarily a period to be romanticized. I think you get more of that in The Searchers, which again I think is another John Ford film, obviously, but is also sort of deconstructing the Western and Western hero in a way. But yeah, I think that's what makes the movie incredible to me, is like that extra layer of like, this is kind of commenting on all westerns in a way, and propaganda, and it has greater ambitions than simply being like a nice classic western tale, but also it
It's
works on that level too. And I do think it is similar to Rio Bravo, kind of like what was being described as like, yes, there's like a storyline of, oh yeah, eventually at some point there's going to be a confrontation between these people, but that's not really the point. To some extent, like the movie takes its time. It's like, he's hanging out in the town, he's cooking, he's washing the dishes, he's like romancing Vera Miles and everything, all that, and it's a hangout, movie in a way. He's becoming a teacher. All that is great stuff. I love the scene where he's the teacher and he's trying to teach them all the Declaration of Independence, and Pompey stands up and like he can't remember that all men are created equal part, and Jimmy Stewart's just like, that's all right, Pompey. A lot of people forget that part. That's a great line, but yeah, I mean, this movie's in my top 100. It was before Cody even put it on this episode. I think it's incredible. I love the cast. I think Lee Marvin is so intimidating. Like, this character is like everyone talks like, oh, Liberty Valance, like Liberty Valance, like he's the scariest dude or whatever. Nobody will stand up to him except for John Wayne, and like you hear all of this about him before like barely even seeing him. I mean, obviously he shows up in the first scene, but well, not the first scene, but when they flashback. But I think Lee Marvin is perfect as like the guy who he's just immediately upon seeing him and like hearing him interact is like, oh, you understand why everyone talks about this guy in the way that they do, and is so like scared to even go near him because he just doesn't give a crap. I love the opening of the movie too, like the whole when they're going to Tom's funeral. Because you don't even know what has really happened yet. But yet somehow it's like you're like very sad and moved, even though like they haven't even explained what happened yet. Like I think that's, again, some of the strengths of the performances. Yeah, it's so good. And again, on a number of different levels, it's just like a fun, hang out in the town Western, but also it has like this deeper layer of commentary about this period, how we depict this period in time. And also, Cody, I know you didn't do this on purpose because I don't think you've seen The Fablemans, but there's a big scene in The Fablemans where Sammy, the Steven Spielberg stand-in, goes with his scout friends to see The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and it basically ends up making his Western film right after that, and it is like heavily modeled after The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. And again, even the print the legend idea like is kind of weaved throughout The Fablemans as well, in the way that Spielberg is telling his story. So it was actually a great time to pick this movie for people to watch it. So if you haven't
for
watched
somebody
it,
that's didn't see The Fablemans yet.
yeah,
So.
and you love The
it's so
Fablemans, then you should watch this as well because it will add some more context to that. And also just the fact that, well, I'm not going to spoil it because Cody hasn't seen The Fablemans yet. I think
Appreciate that.
the people who are here know what I'm talking about, yeah, or alluding.
So, on this watch for me, I went from 4.5 to 5. I love this movie. I think it's one of the best Westerns, overall best movies. I enjoyed it a lot. Scott, what's your rating?
5 stars. It's my second favorite Western after Rio Bravo.
Okay. Dylan.
I'd give it 4.5, I think. I really enjoyed it.
Perfect. And Cam.
Yeah, I give it a 4. Again, a movie that I think on rewatch could go up. Didn't expect to like it at all because it was a Western, so we're doing pretty good here.
Yeah, that's fair. That's absolutely fair.
Maybe if they shot more
right.
real Liberty Balances, I would have given him.
Yeah, that was real blood at Jimmy Stewart's arm.
Killed Lee Marvin, then maybe.
If he was actually elected. No, so that's the show. A little shorter than normal because we missed a panelist, but overall, we will be back. Next episode will be Jacoby Bancroft, Melissa, me, Brian, and Cam Redshaw. Scott will not be here for the next one, but he'll be back probably for the next one after that. The only movie I can announce is He Got Game. I'm picking that. So watch that before next time. But thanks, Cam and Dylan and Michael. I'm hoping he enjoyed the movies that he watched. If you watched them, we will be back next month. Like, subscribe, comment.
I was like, he still has not seen any of the messages. So
do the things. He's out shooting kangaroos. That's what I will say. So we'll catch you next month. Thanks. Oh, go watch The Last One Standing if you're a trivia fan. Last One Standing just happened. There's 2 that will be on the channel by the time, and we'll be back in season form. So, like that. And YLS will be coming back. Have a great one. Bye-bye.